So this is how to fill the reservoir with insulin. For this part you will need your vial of insulin, whether it's Apidra, Humalog or Nova Rapid, and your reservoir. It might either be a 1.8 ml reservoir or a 3 ml reservoir, depending on if you have the 5 series or 7 series pump. But we're going to use the 1.8 for the 5 series pump. So the first step is to get the reservoir out of the packaging. You'll see on the back of the packaging there is a little arrow which tells you to peel down so you can get access to the reservoir. Just peel it open. And inside you'll find the reservoir, which is made of 3 parts. You have the plunger at the back which screws on and off, and if you just screw it off you'll see that it comes all the way off. But what we need to do is make sure we screw it so it's in place, not so it's too tight, but just so it's in place. You'll then see in the centre of the reservoir there are 2 O-rings which make the airtight seal. What we need to do is just pull the plunger towards the back, push it forward a few times just to make sure that we lubricate those O-rings to make sure that the seal is airtight. You'll see down the markings of the centre of the reservoir that there are numbers, and it starts at 0 and goes down to 1 and then 1.8. If you was using a 3 ml reservoir, this would go all the way down to 3. 1 indicates there are 100 units of insulin in there, 1.8 indicates 180 units, and if you had a 3 ml reservoir it would go down to 3, which would be 300 units. Now it's worthwhile at this point to think how much insulin you are on in one day, whether that be all of the insulin from the pump, be basal and bolus added together, or if you're starting on the pump, all of your background insulin and your quick-acting insulin added together to find out how much insulin you're on in one day. For myself, I'm on 30 units of insulin in one day, so what I want to do is just fill up past 3 days worth of insulin in here, number 1 so that we don't waste any, but also, more importantly, number 2 is that if we only fill up to past 3 days worth, when it comes to the end of that 3 days we'll have to change the reservoir over and won't be tempted to leave it in longer, which can actually affect your blood glucose control. So you'll see here that I'm going to put the air to just past 1, so that now I've got just over 100 units of insulin, and if I'm on 30 units of insulin in one day, in 3 days when I need to change it, that will be sort of 90 units worth, so I'll just have just past what I need. So once you have the reservoir at this stage, you then get your insulin vial, turn the reservoir around, and if you hold the transfer guard, the blue transfer guard in the middle, you can then just push that on to the insulin vial. Then you'll see that there's 2 flat parts on the transfer guard where you can get your fingers in between, which go in like that. Then your thumb onto the top, press the plunger all the way down to the bottom, which pushes air in to the vial, creating pressure, so that when we keep our thumb pressed on the top and turn it upside down and then let go with our thumb, the pressure from that air pushes the insulin out and starts to fill it. You can see that it's very important to keep the insulin vial straight up at this point so that we don't introduce any air into the reservoir. So you can see that it is filling, and you might require just to gently pull the plunger down, and I'm going to take mine to the 1 mark, so however much insulin you're on in one day, just past 3 days worth of that. So nice and slowly, mine is now just past the 1 mark. And now we're at this stage, we need to check for any air bubbles, and where there are likely to be air bubbles are the top O-ring where the rubber tight seal is likely to be a couple of air bubbles in there, and also right in the neck of the reservoir. So to get rid of any air bubbles around the bottom O-ring, what you can, there's a couple of choices. You can flick You see some of the air bubbles went to the top there. If that hurts your finger, you can get a pen and tap and give it a fairly good hit. Or the other option is, if you've just got a table, is to hold by the centre of the reservoir and just bang the bottom gently. So now, any air bubbles that I had were and now in the very neck of the reservoir. So what we have to do is just push the plunger up slightly to see the air bubbles go. You can see that my air bubbles have now all gone. And if you need to draw a slight little bit of insulin back out, that is fine. You can pull the plunger down. So mine is just past 1. Now I know that there are no air bubbles in here. Now comes the part of taking off the transfer guard. So what I have to do at this stage is you have to turn it back round. So if you put your thumb back on the bottom of the plunger and your fingers this time just onto the reservoir, so that we keep our thumb on the plunger, and then turn it back round, keeping your thumb on the plunger so you don't introduce any air. When you have it at this stage now, so there's no air being back introduced, is to get your thumb and your finger on the blue transfer guard, do a quarter turn, and once you've done a quarter turn, just lift the reservoir up. And the final stage is you now need to remove the plunger. So you just gently unscrew the plunger, which leaves you with an air bubble-less reservoir of insulin ready to put into the insulin pump. The transfer guard that is left on the insulin vial requires removing, and then this is the part that goes into the sharps bin. The other parts can go into the normal bin.